Wendy, Farha, Wendy, ha ha. I'm sharing an inside joke that we will explain here in just a moment. But what a delight to speak with you today.
You too. Yeah.
So, okay, right off the bat, please explain Wendy haha to the people listening, because it's so clever. You're so multi-talented. Singer, songwriter, speaker, comedian, but you share.
I started singing and songwriting when I was 18, which was 2 years ago. And then I was diagnosed with clinical depression when I was 40. And that was a really dark time. I finally got officially diagnosed and got on the medication. And so that really helped. But I started adding comedy. I wasn't performing a lot. I was doing some concerts here and there. But yeah, I started doing comedy and people said, oh, that kind of works. And I'm like, really? And I said, yeah, you're really funny. And I'm like, I am. And so then I was in a really difficult marriage and everything just seemed to be going wrong. And then when I was 50, I was a month after my 50th birthday, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. I'm the 11th cancer in my family. And I had a double mastectomy. I like to call it my double, the corporate downsizing. And then the doctor said, yeah, you're good to go. I mean, we got it all. And I thought, that's great. So I went back a month later and I was told that it had spread. So that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I started in on a 1.5 years of treatment. And while I was going through it, the doctor said, we think you're terminal, but we won't know for 2 years. Of course, it's a knee-jerk reaction. You just panic. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to sit in fear for 2 years. That's just going to be a total waste of time. So I decided, okay, well, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. I was doing a show once and for kids. And I said, remember when I was here last year, I was healthy. Now I'm sick. And I said, the medicine made all my hair fall out. And I lifted up my wig and I said, see, I'm bald. And the kids were like, and this one little 7-year-old said, yeah, but don't you have an expiration date? And I'm like, excuse me? I thought you had an expiration date. Like, I have no idea where he got that, but we all have an expiration date.
Yes.
And so I thought, man, like my problem isn't going to be if I die. It's going to be if I live, because I had hit 50. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I thought, man, I'd better go big or go home. So I decided, if I live, what is the big dream that I would like to accomplish? And I'd like to get in my car. I'd like to drive all over Canada and the United States. I'm Canadian. And I'd like to sing and I'd like to inspire people and tell my jokes and lift their spirits. And now I have a story. Of overcoming obstacles, because I've overcome clinical depression and now we're working on this battle. And let's face it, like half the population either has had cancer or knows someone who's had cancer. Yeah, so I went through the 1.5 years and went to my oncologist and said, I know what I want to be when I grow up. I want to start doing concerts. And he said, well, you can't do them. You're on chemo. Your immune system's in the toilet. He says, you have to stay away from people. He says, so don't do the concert. So I did the concert and 140 people, you're not going to tell me what to do. And so 140 people showed up and it was just a magical moment. Then a film director got a hold of me and she said, would you be in my movie? So I ended up being in this documentary film called Beauty in the Breast. And it took away the focus from the cancer. You can get Beauty in the Breast on iTunes, by the way, apparently. And I was the comedian in the movie. I started dancing with my IV pole and told people I was pole dancing. And I said, if I had 2 IV poles, I could be bipolar. But yeah, I just found that the humor and the comedy was just lifting me and lifting others. Spoiler alert, 2011, I lived. I got a clean bill of health. And a few weeks later, I hit the road with my first 5-week tour, kicked it off with a TV interview, and just started driving all over Canada and making people laugh. And what I wasn't prepared for was the impact that my story had. The music and comedy was great, but what people really want to hear is that you've gone through trauma and you've overcome it, like you have, Cheryl. That's a win-win, because everyone's going to go through stuff. Like, I don't know anyone who hasn't got, I know one person who's just had a really smooth life and everyone else is just digging the trenches.
One person.
Yeah. Yeah. I said, doesn't anything bad ever happen to you? She goes, well, my husband and I had an argument once in the car. Okay. And how did you resolve it? She goes, well, we talked about it and then it was okay. Good for you. You just go take on the world. So people tell me their trauma when I'm on the road.
Yes.
Because they see I'm all about authenticity. So I just tell everything and people resonate with that. And then I hear their stories and they're far worse, Cheryl. they'll say, oh, my kid has cerebral palsy and my other kid is, intellectually challenged. My husband left me for another woman and my house is in foreclosure. Oh, but I haven't had cancer like you. I'm thinking, I'll take the cancer any day. Yeah, cancer seems to trump everything in people's minds. But yeah, they'll tell me their stories and they're just desperate for comedy and inspiration. So that's a very long answer.
There you are with
And
the comedy and the inspiration. And it's just so brilliant how you turned Farha into haha.
So my last name Farha, my grandparents are from Damascus, Syria. They were Syrian Orthodox and they came to the States through Ellis Island in 1903. And then they thought, it's not cold enough here in New York. Let's go to Canada. So then I came to Montreal. My dad was born in Montreal. And Farha means joy in Arabic. So here I am, a comedian. And so everyone misspells Farha. So I thought, well, we better fix this. So when I started rebranding myself through your course, I thought of Wendy Haha. So now I have Wendy, the domain name's wendyhaha.com and wendyhaha.ca. And I've got someone working on the new website following the pattern that you showed us in the course.
It's just absolutely brilliant. And the fact that you've turned this challenge into a way to not only get yourself through, but to get others through, and you're lifting the world through the thing that was such a dark moment for you. I mean, it really is. It's such an example of how you've overcome that you said was the best thing that ever happened to you.
So my tagline, I guess, or one of my mottos is your mess becomes your message, your test becomes your testimony, and your misery becomes your ministry. Now that's not a given. That's all about attitude. Your mess can stay your mess and you will go to your grave grumbling about how unfair it is. Your misery can just stay. We all know people who are just miserable and they may not even be all that badly off compared to other people, but it's the introspection and the self-pity that just kills you off. So I really, your attitude determines your altitude. I mean, there are all these, mottos that, they sell well, but until you live it, it's another matter when you have to go through the pain and like what you've gone through, the forgiveness. I mean, you have every right to be bitter. I mean, you could easily have just dissolved in bitterness and resentment, but it's not a good way to live. Doesn't end well.
For good reason, and they're upset for, what seems like a viable reason. And yet, like you said, it's no way to live. Your unwillingness to spend 2 years in fear is just extraordinary. Excuse me for interrupting, Wendy.
No, it's fine. So one of my mottos is impression without expression leads to depression. So when you're impressed to do something,
that's brilliant.
Impression without expression. So you're impressed to do something. Yes. Now it has to be expressed. Yes. And when you don't express that gift, when you don't express that passion, that light, it turns to depression. And probably also, I love quotes. You've also heard the quote, I'm sure. Most people die with the music still in them.
Yes.
So that's what it is. Yes. It's impressed. When you feel impressed to do something, it isn't going to be easy because you have to fight. I'm a woman in Christian circles. So there's still that, old boys club sometimes where if you're a woman in ministry, you're going to have to figure out some creative ways to get your voice heard. If I just sit in church every Sunday, I'm not going to be able to speak very often, if at all. So I had to invent touring. And so people will say, well, wow, how can you tour by yourself? How do you tour? That's so brave. I'm like, I don't see it as bravery because the alternative is depression. I'm going to just sit home and rot with my gifts. So the only other alternative I see for expressing myself is touring. And now with online, so that's another alternative. I mean, you could call it bravery, but it's just survival. Like I have to give my voice to the world. I have to do it or else I'll just be sad. So it might look like bravery. And I'm sure people have said that to you. Oh, you're so courageous. You're so inspirational, whatever. Bottom line, it's just, I just want to be happy. I don't want to sit around moping.
You're so brilliant, Wendy. Yeah. And you've got to give this gift to the world. And even though you had this wish in your heart and you had done some media before, like you said, kicked off the tour with that, you hadn't yet hit in the way that you have now. Where so much media has covered you, both Canadian and American, of course, because you're that inspiring. And people are looking for things that make them feel good. People are intentionally searching for this. I read something recently about search terms post-COVID, or, were it only post-COVID, but, these during COVID search terms, people want to be inspired and uplifted. And you've got this perfect balm for the soul
Mm-hmm.
for which people are searching by the millions.
Mm-hmm.
And now one of the great things is you've also got all this media
Mm-hmm.
that mentions you're the real deal. So when
Mm-hmm.
people are looking,
Mm-hmm.
they recognize, aha, there's our gal.
Mm-hmm.
And your
Yeah.
fantastic new website. I can't wait.
Yeah, that'll be good. I mean,
Yes.
it's, there's so much competition out there. There's so many voices that it is a lot of hard work on social media, I find, just to get a consistent message out there. So I really appreciate the template you've given us. And you are always emphasizing this goes on for life. It's not a 10-week course. You've done the heavy lifting. That's it. It's like exercise, right? If you want to keep the weight off, you just keep exercising. If you want to be healthy, you keep exercising. So I'm not there yet. I'm learning how to make my voice heard. It's also COVID, so it's a pretty tough sell. Do you want to hire me? Yeah, maybe in a year, for live shows. I think you're doing a lot more live shows in the States than we are here in Canada, but I'm immunocompromised. And so do I really want to start mixing with big crowds?
Right.
So I'm hoping to launch a podcast this month and do more on the YouTube channel and just using, wow, social media, it brings us to the world. It brings the world to us. It's something that no other generation has had at their disposal. So it's mind boggling that you can have a potential audience of 8 billion people.
Right. So, and now that you've separated yourself from the competition via your messaging and the media that has edified you, it starts to make things easier. When you've got 8 billion people, that's a loud, crowded world where everybody's trying to get attention. And even if people are searching by the millions for something inspirational, uplifting content, now there's something that distinguishes you and lets people know that you are, in fact, the real deal, a viable place to go for this uplifting experience. Well, Wendy, what would you say to someone who is considering booking a strategy session with us, but has not yet done that?
If you are ready to do the work and ready to do the heavy lifting, of course, the strategy session is free. So there's no risk in listening to what you guys have to say. And I think if people are serious about their craft and they're willing to do the heavy lifting and they have the time to do it, it's absolutely a great investment.
Well, I can't wait to continue to watch you rise and continue to garner attention from the media and your audience and all. Thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ha ha.
Yes.